Jordan Peterson is wrong sometimes, and this happens to be one of those times for sure. He is a very smart guy, even a guy I look up to and admire, have learned from, and have been inspired by, so I have a lot of respect for the guy. But there are some things he just doesn't know as much about as others, and I can say for sure, he does not know as much about dating as I do. So let's take a look at some of the things he did have to say about dating and where I think he's actually quite wrong. So I've been getting requests to talk about Jordan Peterson for a long time, and it got me thinking and looking into some of his clips, and in particular his clips regarding dating. Some of the stuff he says is very smart. Some of the stuff he says is very ridiculous in my opinion, actually. So enough preamble, let's take a look at what he actually has to say.
When the sexual constraints are lifted off women, they all migrate to a very small percentage of men, 5% maybe. And then those men have an almost unlimited field of sexual access. And so you could say that's a benefit to them, but it's not, because it trains them to be manipulative, Machiavellian, instrumental psychopaths, because all they're doing is pursuing a string of pleasure-based, hedonistic, short-term relationships.
Okay, this is probably an overstatement. There are some men who basically do have almost unlimited sexual prospects, but it's certainly not 5% of the population. It might be the top few thousand men in the world, like the A-list celebrity, well-known, and also known as attractive. That may be true. Like you have the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world, and the Cristiano Ronaldos of the world, and that kind of stuff, but that's not 5% of the population. So this is an overstatement. If women like you, that's training you to be a manipulative, Machiavellian, instrumental psychopath. That is a strong statement. That seems like the kind of statement you might have to back up with some serious arguments. I don't think you can just make that statement out of hand. Also, in my experience, once guys are successful with women, that's when they stop being very manipulative. That's when they stop trying so hard, because usually they kind of are like, look, I have women. Life is easy. I don't have to try. Usually, actually, a lot of the manipulative male behavior comes from the opposite. It comes from scarcity. It's the guys who have the least women in their lives and are the most desperate for women that are actually trying the hardest to manipulate and lie to women to get something. Right? I mean, think of it this way. If you can sit back and get unlimited women without doing anything, what the fuck is the point? Right? Who would do that? It doesn't make sense. Also, from personal experience, most men I know that actually have abundance with women are just happier, more together, down-to-earth people. I'm gonna just chime in with my experience here. From what I've seen of guys who are highly successful with women, and I've known a lot of guys like that, there are a very few who are just committed to having as many one-night stands as possible. There are a very few. The vast majority, though, wants to have good long-term relationships, and that's what they end up doing. So they end up sleeping with a lot of girls for a while, then they end up settling down with a girl for a real, genuine relationship for a period of time. Maybe their whole life, maybe a few years, just like what most people have. And so in practice, most men, even highly desirable men, when they meet girls they genuinely like, they do settle down for periods of time. There are very few, I mean like a tiny percentage of men who just want one-night stands all the time.
That's bad training if you want to be a reciprocal human being, and if you want to learn how to participate in a real relationship. So, and then it's catastrophe for the women, because none of those men are incentivized to form anything that approximates a long-term relationship. And then the rest of the men are left with nothing. Yeah, so that's
disastrous for society.
Disastrous, yeah, it's a disaster.
All right, on that part, he is 100% right. It is absolutely awful to be one of those guys that's living in scarcity, that doesn't have options and is wondering, what the hell do I do? That's literally exactly why I do this channel, because I was once one of those guys and have dealt with a lot of guys in that position and thankfully helped them to get out of that position into a more abundant, happier life. So what can we take from that clip? Well, Jordan Peterson is largely right on the macro level, that a lot of women are attracted to the top percentage of men, and that does leave a lot of men out. That's true. However, the idea that makes the top men, the desirable men, into psychopaths, I disagree, and I don't find any evidence on the other side, so it would take a lot to persuade me that's actually true. Another side note, this isn't something that Jordan Peterson actually said, or even maybe intended to have in the clip, but I think a lot of guys, when they watch this clip, they get depressed. They start to think, oh, I'm not in that top 5%, so I'm a lost cause, I have no chance, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim. And the fact of the matter is, where you are in that hierarchy, you have a lot of control over that. You have a lot of control over that in terms of what you do with your life and whether you become successful, and also whether you become attractive to women, because it is something you can explicitly change, right? So don't take these statistics in a defeatist way, please.
Young people are being sold a shoddy bill of goods. Even if you're successful at what you pursue, say serial sexual satisfaction, Tinder, you're a hot Tinder item. It's like, well, if you're a male and you're attractive and you have an endless array of willing females, it's a gateway to psychopathy as far as I'm concerned, because you have to divorce your sexuality from the humanity of the people that you're engaged with sexually. Well, all that's going to do is make you hard and bitter.
So again, this is pretty similar to the last clip, this idea that, you know, these few men, the hot Tinder items in this case, rather than the 5%, but same general idea. You have an endless array of willing females. Again, overstating the case, right? 5% of the population does not have like women at the snap of their finger. This is like the uber celebrities, maybe a few thousand men in the world have this, not 5% of the male population. So let's not overstate the extremity of all this, please. So this is that same idea, that same argument that like if you sleep with a lot of people, it makes you a psychopath. I do understand the idea that, let's say for example, if you are a virgin, right, sex seems like a bigger deal to you than if you've had sex a lot of times. But why does that mean that you have to treat your sexual partners like shit? Where is the connection? Why would you not enjoy and want them to have a good experience as well and want them to enjoy you as well? Right? This idea that just because you had something a lot, you can't like do it well or appreciate it or care about the people involved, that's crazy. So let's say that you've never had sushi in your entire life. And you have sushi for the first time. You'll probably be mind blown by it. You'll be like, holy shit, I never had this before. Assuming it's good sushi. If it's bad sushi, you might think this is the most disgusting thing ever. But regardless, it will be a new experience for you. It'll be a phenomenal experience for you. On the other hand, someone who's had sushi over and over again, who's had lots of different sushi at lots of different places around the world, and has had the absolute best sushi, actually has a more sophisticated palate for sushi and actually can appreciate it in a different and better way than someone who's never had it before. Do they appreciate it differently? Yes. Is having sushi, just having it, less of a big deal for them? Yes. But does that mean they don't appreciate it and they don't care about it? Arguably, they might care about it more. They might treat it with more respect. Right? So this idea that just because you've done something a lot means you have to do it in a shitty way, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think that holds water. And again, it doesn't jive with personal experience. To take this point a bit further, guys who have not had very much sex, whether it be very few sexual partners or very few sexual events, typically are not very good in bed. And so the women who sleep with them are going to have a less good experience. They're probably not going to have an orgasm. Also, the guy might have like weird insecurities or hangups that might make the experience awkward for the women and less pleasant overall. And so again, having more experience with something, being better at it. Basically everything you do in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And you know what? Being better at relationships, because you've been in more relationships with more girls, does make you a better sexual and relationship partner for women. It's the same as anything else. Practice makes better in most cases. Not to make an ad hominem argument in any way, but I don't think Jordan Peterson has had that many sexual partners. I mean, you could ask him someday if you ever meet him. But as someone who has had an abundance, it is not a bad experience. It's highly, thoroughly enjoyable. One other huge benefit of having had multiple sexual partners and multiple relationships is when you actually do settle down, you don't have to look back and wonder what if. You've actually been there, you know what's in the marketplace, you know what's available, and you know that you got a good deal and didn't settle. Whereas if you end up marrying the first girl you ever slept with, you have to wonder, did I really do the best? Is there better out there? Etc. So I think that's also a critical factor to consider. All right, on to the final clip, and this is a clip I have very intimate personal experience about, as you'll understand in a moment.
So here's two ways to use language. Like let's say I'm going to pick up a girl in a bar, all right? So I have a goal in mind, and the goal is sort of, the girl's irrelevant to the goal insofar as she could be another girl. So it's a psychopathic goal in some ways. Because the individual doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do, say if I'm a pickup artist, I follow these pickup artists online, because I'm so curious about their use of psychology. And all they ever do is come up with, it's like a whole horde of men talking about how to deceive and manipulate women. It's extraordinarily interesting and extremely psychopathic. And also it's very, 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 very unsophisticated and unskilled. Because what the guys are, they're lumps, basically, and what they're trying to do is to acquire the veneer of sophistication. And that's psychopathic. So
okay, this is an interesting argument, I guess. So the girl's irrelevant because she could be another girl, you haven't met her yet. Okay, so if you're going shopping for a house, the house is irrelevant because you haven't started looking at the houses yet. That doesn't mean you can't love one house and dislike another house. Once you meet the girl, you will know the girl. The idea that you would like to have a relationship, the idea that you would like to meet a nice girl, doesn't mean that the girl's not a human being to you. And when you do actually go to the bar, you're gonna see a variety of girls, and some of them you'll like and some of them you won't. And when you start talking to them, some of them you'll like more and some of them you'll like less. All right, so just because you don't know about this idea of a woman you haven't met yet doesn't mean that the desire for a relationship is a psychopathic thing. That's insane. Sorry, love you in general, but that's insane. And I promise you, every single time you talk to a girl, it becomes very personal and very intimate, and it's very much about the girl in front of you. And if it's not, you won't be very damn good with women. Here I'd like to make the point that every single man on the planet is trying to attract women. And every woman on the planet who's straight, to some extent, cares about attracting men. The question is it being done well or poorly, effectively or ineffectively? But the idea that it's unusual that someone would be trying to be better with the opposite sex, that's not an unusual thing at all. That's just a human thing. Everybody is trying to do that. Also, these statements simply aren't true for the vast majority of the pickup community. Yes, there are a few toxic individuals out there, as there will be in any sample of the population. But for the most part, guys in the pickup community truly want good relationships, and they truly want to please women. They want to attract women by being attractive guys. Also, the guys who try to be manipulative, usually it doesn't work because usually women see right through that. It's a perhaps ironic fact of the pickup community that you actually have to become an attractive man to convince a woman you're an attractive man. Faking it fundamentally doesn't work beyond a certain level. So guys who try to be manipulative and who try to be fake usually fail. This is one of my absolute favorite things that people do when attacking game. They say two things at once. On the one hand, they say,
it's evil and it's manipulative and it's dangerous.
On the other hand, it's unsophisticated and ineffective. It can't be both. It can't be both. Pick one. Either it doesn't work or it's dangerous. But it can't not work and be dangerous at the same time. And almost everybody who attacks game, they say both at once. Right? If it's ineffective and pathetic and has no teeth to it, well then it can't be dangerous. If it's dangerous, at least you have to admit it works. I love this paradox. I love that people try and do both at once. And I think they have to do this to be politically correct, right? They're like, it's evil, it's awful. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't work. Just to be politically correct, it also doesn't work. It couldn't work. Pick one, please. I don't think anybody's trying to be sophisticated. I think we're trying to be attractive. But it is very interesting and telling that someone very academic thinks that that's the pinnacle of what's going to be attractive to a woman is being sophisticated. That's not what attracts women at all.
But they're very interested. So what they're doing is teaching their followers instrumental language. So if you want to sleep with a girl, here's how to do it. Here's how to manipulate her, you know. And they have a bunch of tricks like wear an expensive watch and dress up, and also don't just dress up, so dress up rich, roughly speaking, but also add something peculiar to your wardrobe, like something that really stands out as somewhat odd. They call that peacocking. So that the girl can see that not only are you rich and successful, but you've got that little bit of individuality that sets you apart from all the other rich and successful guys, you know. And so that's like an Osiris-Horus combination, basically. But it's all bullshit, because the guys aren't like that. So it's, and then they have all these little routines they use that are verbal routines, and they have these guys they go to the bar with to help them with their little routines, and it's like, it's completely, what are they doing? They're using language instrumentally. They have a goal in mind, which is their goal, and they know that what the goal is, and they know that the goal is right insofar as they're pursuing the goal, and then they're willing to say anything to obtain that goal.
Okay, so this is interesting. First of all, dress up and wear a nice watch is more mainstream advice, not so much pickup community advice anyway. But then peacocking, yes, wearing an unusual item, yes, that is something that was big back in the day. People used to go crazy about it, and it still is something that people do. And you know what? It still kind of works. And you know what? Pickup artists aren't the only people that do it either. Anybody who has a sense of fashion does this. So if by he means our trick is to dress well, that's cool. I will endorse that trick. I think dressing well to get girls is a good idea and a good trick to have. I actually honestly wish more guys in the pickup community did it. I think the problem that I see more often with students is that they don't dress well enough and they don't care enough about their looks because there's this idea that looks don't matter, which looks do matter somewhat. So there's a few different ideas to unpack here. Most people are not just blatantly lying. And in fact, if you look at almost anybody who's teaching this stuff, they don't have channels full of material that says
lie to girls, lie to girls, lie to...
That's not what's being taught. Look at my channel. I teach you not to lie to girls. I teach you be honest, be attractive, be the real deal, etc. So that's kind of a mischaracterization. It's a massive exaggeration at the least, if not a complete mischaracterization. Sorry to break it to you, Jordan, but like every single human being from birth is using communication, using their language, even if it's just crying as their language, using it instrumentally. A child cries to get food from mom. A child cries to say my diaper is not comfortable for me. right? That's from the very beginning. A child asks for food in a way that's cute to try and get their parents to give them ice cream. That's just how we communicate. And you know what? You kind of have to learn that to succeed in the world. If you didn't know how to do that, if you did not know how to persuade, you would be very unsuccessful at life. There would be no sales industry, number one. There would be no marketing industry. People would not have stuff, that people would not be able to find the products they need because no one would be offering them to them in the right way. I mean, there's all kinds of issues with saying that you can't have goals and then try and pursue your goals in life. That's absolutely a crazy stance to take. Of course, we are determined, goal-driven entities as human beings. And of course, we're going to use our words and our actions and our hard work and all kinds of stuff to get what we want. That is what we do. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's plenty right with that. Also, and I'll try and address this quickly, the whole idea of routines. There was a time when routines were all the rage. They were what was taught they were always taught as the best form of game. The problem with routines, they're not flexible to the situation, they're not flexible to the girl. And what we found over time is it's actually much more effective to pay attention to the girl and pay attention to the situation and adapt dynamically, i.e. actually interact with the girl in front of you rather than to monologue at this like faceless idea of a girl that you came up with, in your pickup layer when you're like writing out the routine, as probably how Mr. Peterson is envisioning us doing it, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Even in the times of routines, even when I actually had a game style based on routines back in the early 2000s, most of my best interactions were when I deviated early on from the routine and had a normal conversation with the girl, okay? So routines fundamentally only work a little bit. They can convey you as a generally attractive person, but they're not gonna help you to adjust dynamically and interact in the moment with the girl, which is a key critical part of game that's missing if all you do is routines. So to sum all of this up, first of all, I don't mean any of this to be a personal attack on Jordan Peterson. He is a very smart guy, a guy who has had a lot of good insights, a guy who's helped a lot of people and inspired a lot of people, and even someone who I've personally learned from. So I don't want this to be a personal attack. However, when it comes to dating and relationships, I don't think he has the level of experience that he should to be talking about some of these matters, and I think there's a few very specific things he gets very wrong. Number one, his understanding of what pickup and game is outdated at best and quite possibly completely wrong in a lot of ways, right? It is not this manipulative evil thing that he seems to think it is. And also, very important point, people who do game are not the only people trying to intentionally attract the opposite sex. Basically, everyone is doing that. So to the extent that you can think that game is evil, it's only evil because it does better what everybody is doing. Also, I do love this contradiction where you're like, it's evil and also it doesn't work. So I always find that amusing. Beyond that, though, he has this bigger kind of societal argument that if you sleep with a lot of people, it's going to make you less human or more detached or inhibit your ability to form relationships. I don't think that that is the case. In general, with every skill in life, doing it more makes you better at it. Having more sex makes you better at sex. Having more relationships makes you better at relationships. And most people who have a lot of sexual partners, who have a lot of relationships, do eventually settle down. And when they settle down by choice rather than by scarcity. And so I don't think that that's a bad thing. And my experience, that's not just me intellectualizing it, my experience with the people I've known who have had abundance with women does bear out this experience. He does make a very good point, though, in terms of that there are a few men doing very, very well and a lot of men not doing as well. And I would encourage you to do anything and everything you can to not be in that population not doing well. There's also one other very good Jordan Peterson clip. It's not in these, but it's in one of the other ones I reviewed, where he said actually being abstinent because you don't have a choice about the matter or through scarcity is not a virtue, right? So I will give him a lot of credit for saying that. It's maybe a controversial thing to say, but a very good thing to say, and I agree. Being in that group of guys who doesn't get women because you can't is not a good thing. You want to be a man who is making choices rather than being on the outs. You don't want to be in that left out percentage of frustrated men. Please don't be that. And in fact, I feel so strongly about that, I've dedicated my life's work to helping men out of that. So that's one place where he and I agree. And I think he and I would also agree that having so many men who are in that frustrated segment of the population isn't good for society at large, even beyond not being good for those men. I am a big proponent of getting men out of that, and I think he has a very different approach to that than I do. I think that in the case of dating, my approach is probably more effective, but that's not to say you can't find good material from him as well. Thanks for watching. If you disagree with me, or if you agree with me, or if you just have an interesting opinion, post it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. See you on the next video.